David Nusser, Real Film Review, hailed this week's movie as a near flawless piece of work. Time Out critic Jeff Andrew raved, "This is what a monster movie is supposed to be like, and it's terrific." And according to Vincent Canby of the New York Times, it looks like the sort of movie that might have been put together so that tourists visiting Universal Studios could see a movie being made. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we determine the fate of Tremors.
Prequel. Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be?
It's the Ruined Childhood Podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters. It's Ruined Childhoods.
Greetings, Graboid fighters.
Graboid fighters. Oh, wow, we're jumping right in, right?
Well, I mean, what else are we supposed to do here?
So then, John, what's shaking?
Oh, you know, this and that. I watched Tremors recently. It was cool, and I'm excited to talk about it.
You know, John, before we do, first of all, just want to welcome anyone who's listening. And just in case this is your first time listening to us, just to give you a sense of what we do, we talk about movies such as Tremors that have a fan base, that have a cult built around them.
This movie is the definition of cult classic.
It pretty much is, but but also movies like Tremors that have franchises built around them, whether those are big screen franchises or direct to video franchises nonetheless. And we throw in our, I'll say my 2 cents, John's 2 cents, our collective 4 cents to share what our ideas are about that this property and what its future could possibly be. Where could it go in terms of sequels, prequels, reboots, remakes, Broadway musicals,
why Broadway
series.
music? Why does it have to go straight to Broadway?
It does not have to go straight to... I meant in the style of a Broadway musical. Some people just think of musicals as Broadway musicals, you know? John, not everybody is from the New York area and is familiar with the off-Broadway,
how about this?
Off-Broadway.
How about this? But that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm saying
Such a coastal elite.
What I'm saying is, and I will use this as an example because we've already talked about this property, but maybe one idea could be a Speed 2 cruise control live performance on cruise ships. If you really want to scare the pants off of people.
Yeah, hey, you get UB40 to play. You get whichever touring UB40 is cheaper.
Look, Dan, there are enough members of UB40 that I'm sure one of them is available to play the steel drums on a cruise ship for a few months.
Okay. All right. Before you go too far in knocking my favorite British reggae band.
Look, Dan, I'm just speaking the truth. That is all.
So speaking of truth, I wanted to go back to School Ties for a moment. So our last episode. Our last episodes, and I had a couple of thoughts that I felt were worth coming back to, and I'll give everyone context. So, yes, John.
This is a segment of the show that I would like to call, oh, and one more thing.
Can we just call them tangents?
No, because I have them too. Come on.
Okay. Oh, and yeah, the one more thing. Oh, yes.
And one more thing.
Yes, the one more thing as to last week's, or the last episode. So anyway, back to School Ties. First of all, I just needed to point out that Matt Damon, within the last few years, he's definitely done a few interesting movies, and one of them was called Downsizing, which also featured Margot Martindale,
Did it
who was
really?
in Lorenzo's Oil. Yes.
Did it really?
Yes, I had it on.
I did not watch Downsizing. Oh, you watched it. You saw it happen.
I didn't see the whole thing. I watched it. I was just, I was kind of like, I'm going to throw something on for a little bit. And I think I had started watching it several months ago and was kind of like, I'm not in the mood for this right now. And then it's like, let me check in with this. Hey, what do you know? Marco Martindale. And so, yes, and as John and I often try to do, we try to connect cast members of the films we're discussing with cast members of the 1992 drama Lorenzo's Oil.
Speaking of Lorenzo's Oil, Jason Bateman plays the character Lorenzo Zoil in the movie Paul, and have you seen or heard anything about the new show that not only features Jason Bateman, but is at least the first couple episodes directed by Jason Bateman? It's on HBO called The Outsider.
It looks very interesting. I haven't watched it yet.
I checked out the first 2 episodes because that's what's out at the time that we've recorded this. And it's pretty, like, there are things about it that I don't necessarily love. It's almost kind of like supernatural Bosch, which is interesting because you and I, right before recording, we're talking about Bosch, but it reminds me of like a supernatural Bosch. And, I don't necessarily love all of like, the dialogue and things like that, but it is certainly an intriguing program. And I'm interested in seeing what happens. Anyway,
I will check it out when the opportunity arises. And then one more thing about School Ties. So when we discuss School Ties, we had both discussed possibly a School Ties episodic series. Yours was more docu-series. Mine was scripted. And we didn't really discuss, the creative minds and producers, but who we would guess, or who we would want. And it occurred to me, I was like, man, the perfect person to bring School Ties to the, to television, to episodic television would be Jason Katims, the showrunner who he did Friday Night Lights and Parenthood. Both very, so along with Ron Howard, Brian Grazer, Imagine Entertainment.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, but I also have 4 words for you. Executive producer Dick Wolf.
Yes. Yes, and
for those who didn't listen to the last episode, Dick Wolf wrote School Ties based on his own experiences. So it's not like it's like Law and Order, because it's not.
No, very little Law and Order.
Ooh, interesting.
St. Matthews.
It's more of an honor code than a law. Yeah. So,
all right.
So that's our but one more thing.
That's all I have to say about School Ties. John, anything new, any more recent releases? Oh, we have to talk about the Academy Award nominations.
Sure.
I guess we don't have to. There's no honor code or law or rule that says
no one's making us do it. I'm just going to pull them up right now for myself.
Yeah. I'm looking at them.
So, what were your general thoughts?
Okay, so my general thoughts are, first of all, I'm going to get this out of the way because I went to see Little Women the other day, and just
I think I agree with what you're about to say.
Enjoyed it. I just so thoroughly enjoyed it on so many levels. My wife, who it wasn't on her radar at all, and we walked out of the theater and she said, this is not something that I would have picked to go see in the theater, but I'm so glad we went. And
yeah,
the performances, I'm so happy that Florence Pugh got nominated.
Yeah.
The Saoirse
was
Ronan.
So great.
Saoirse Ronan. I apologize. But she's phenomenal. It's kind of like, it was almost a given she was going to be nominated.
She's great. She's consistently great.
And I know I'm at this point, the latest in a series of echoes of this, but very disappointed to not see Greta Gerwig nominated as Best Director. And I say this, yes, because the direction is phenomenal. I mean, this movie deserves. See, I was so happy I saw it on a big screen because the cinematography is beautiful, and I'm so happy she was nominated for her screenplay because not that I have read. I'll admit to not having read the novel, but you could feel that voice. I've said
before, and I don't know if I've said it on this podcast, where it's like, yes, it does not take place in present day, but it feels very current.
The voice is, well, it shows you how that story really provides a vehicle for that voice. And it's such a sad... It almost tells me like that the voters didn't get it in not nominating her, but
or they didn't give it a chance.
Or they
didn't even watch it.
Well, or they just wrote it off as like, oh, this is, anyone could direct this. But I mean, like, honestly, Ang Lee got nominated for Sense and Sensibility, and I felt like this was a movie that Alicia compared it to. She said, it felt like Sense and Sensibility, like Pride and Prejudice, like those really like great, cinematic dramas. The Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley is the one that I think she was referring to. But I think that just her voice, Greta Gerwig's voice, was so present in it the same way that it was with Lady Bird. And for her not to be nominated, and this is where it makes me almost sad to say this because I'm such a fan of both of these filmmakers, but I don't believe that either Martin Scorsese or Quentin Tarantino deserved to be there more than she did. Right. And I'm sure that there's another director another filmmaker that I'm not thinking of that you could also add to that list and say they deserve to be there, because I watched The Irishman. I loved The Irishman. Or I shouldn't say I loved The Irishman. I really liked The Irishman. But it was also I think I've said this before. I don't remember if I've said it on the podcast or just to you, but it was kind of like going to see a Rolling Stones concert in 2020. Like, you're seeing the Stones. Like, there's Keith Richards, Mick Jagger.
You're there to see them play
they're
the
right
hits.
in front of you. They're doing their thing. They're doing their thing. But you know that had you gone to see them do their thing in 1975, 1980, 1985, even 1990, it would have been a whole lot more. Yeah. Like, there would have been a whole lot more there.
And let's face it, after 3.5 hours, everybody's exhausted.
Right. Yes. And all due, credit to Scorsese, to De Niro, to everyone in that cast, to everyone who worked on that film. I'm not going to say it doesn't feel long because it's 3.5 hours, but it's interesting. I just felt with that, my question was, why did this story need to be told? Right. Why was it so important that it be told in this way? Don't get me, I appreciate it. I'm such a fan of all of those people and their bodies of work that I don't mind. I say thank you. I say thank you, Netflix. Thank you, Martin Scorsese, for having Al Pacino play Jimmy Hoffa. Even though I kind of kept thinking, like, man, I really thought it was like, I really felt, why did he get nominated? It was,
okay. I felt watching Al Pacino play Jimmy Hoffa, I was just like, I can't get out of my mind that this is just Al Pacino playing Jimmy Hoffa, he is essentially the same character that he played in Dick Tracy, except more ridiculous looking.
Yes, the courtroom scene. The courtroom scene was so... Yes, I was thinking that.
It felt
Caprice.
very silly. It seemed to me like they were putting such a big emphasis on the de-aging that they didn't stop to ask, why are we doing this in the first place?
Right.
And I don't know.
Why couldn't this have been done with a... Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No. All I was going to say is that, like, it's a story that I didn't really care to know. Or if I wanted to see a movie about that, then I certainly didn't have to be watching it for such a long time. And I'm the kind of person who believes that a longer movie just means more for your money. And not all the time, but I don't necessarily believe in the 90-minute rule also. But 3.5 hours was just a little gratuitous for something that could have been done in a lot less time.
If you're going over 2 hours and 15 minutes, I there needs to be a reason.
Yeah.
We can't have this Return of the King, Lord of the Rings with okay, all right, that must be the ending. No, never mind.
If a movie is over 2 hours and 15 minutes, it better end with the following 5 words. Directed by Paul Thomas Anderson.
True. Paul Thomas Anderson does know how to make you feel like the long running time is
no time
on
wasted.
A pretty consistent basis.
Yeah.
No time. Well, and also point of reference, Punch Drunk Love, not very long, so it shows he doesn't draw it out if it does. But back to the Oscar nominations, because Paul Thomas Anderson didn't have a horse in the race this year.
Correct.
But I haven't seen everything. I have seen admittedly very few. I very much would like to see Parasite. I don't know when I'm going to have the opportunity to do that.
It's a trip, man.
I really want to see
wild.
that. I really want to watch The Two Popes, so I'm grateful that that is at my disposal.
Right.
And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I liked it. I had some issues with it. There's a piece up on my blog that we'll have linked in the episode description about my disappointments with it. So that's why I felt a little bit like Tarantino didn't deserve to be there as much as other filmmakers. So, and I love Quentin Tarantino. I'm the biggest Quentin Tarantino apologist.
This is true.
And yeah, so I love that Quentin Tarantino is nominated. It's like if Quentin Tarantino wins Best Director this year, I'm going to feel like I did with The Departed when I was like, I'm glad Scorsese got Best Director, but I wish he had gotten it for something else.
Right. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I really enjoyed. I think about it a lot. And when you go back and look at past years and to see movies, whether it's Best Picture or Best Director, and you see that something won that no one's talking about anymore, and then you see some of the other nominees that people are still talking about, you're just like, yeah. That's exactly why that should have won instead, because we're still talking about it. And I think that something like Parasite is going to be something people are going to still be talking about and comparing things to. And I think that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, as is with most Tarantino films, people are going to be still talking about it. But people are still talking about Inglourious Bastards or Django, or especially Pulp Fiction. People are constantly bringing these up, and they will be for a very long time. I don't think that people are going to be talking about The Irishman for much longer.
No.
Just looking at the Best Picture nominees, no one's going to be talking about Ford versus Ferrari on, February 15th. It's like, it's going to be in the past before you know it. Ford versus Ferrari was enjoyable. I liked it, but it's not a Best Picture movie. Jojo Rabbit, I think, is one that people are going to be talking about. Joker, people are going to be talking about just because it's a property that people bring up over and over again, and there's going to be another Joker at some point. People are going to be comparing them to Joaquin Phoenix.
If I may for a moment, sorry, you brought
Sure.
up Jojo Rabbit, and which I haven't seen it yet, but just from what I have seen of it, there's another director who maybe deserves to be up on that best director list.
Absolutely. And last night I watched Hunt for the Wilder People, which I hadn't seen before. And that
Oh,
is
I
a
haven't seen it
delightful.
either.
It's on Hulu. It is a
Yeah.
delightful movie. I cried at the end.
Uh-huh.
And it's a simple movie, a simple story with, Sam Neill, and then like a pretty much unknown kid, and they're amazing.
Right.
It's incredible. So yeah, Taika
All right.
Waititi should absolutely be up there for directing.
No, you brought up Joker. No, we're stopping on Joker there, and I think there's a lot of people who have been saying like, all right, Joker's getting a little much, but as you're saying, it's a movie that we'll be talking about, and it could be the new kind of standard for the performances.
I don't think
different
so.
Jokers.
I don't think so, because Heath Ledger made such a big impact with his Joker in a movie that people, hold in, high esteem.
Yes.
And Joker, yes, it's nominated for Best Picture, but it's really not that special.
And here's where I maybe I need to see it again. And
Well, it's kind of like name any other character in that movie that's not like him or like Thomas Wayne.
but that's the thing though, is it's very much as a portrayal of someone with mental illness who's not and I also you have to remember, I saw this movie like the day after I was in a mental health first aid workshop,
Of course.
all day long. So, and as I sat there and watched the movie, I was like, oh yeah, I'm like, yes, these are all the warning signs.
I think that everything that's good about that movie is because of Joaquin Phoenix, and all the things that are good in the movie are good despite Todd Phillips. Because I've seen interviews with him, and I'm like, that man doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know the movie that he's made. There were some things that really made me question whether it came together in editing or if it really is just the strength of Joaquin Phoenix's performance.
That's unfortunate, because I really did feel like he exceeded my expectations and surprised me. As the art of it surprised me, and then when you bring up did it come together in editing, and I think about the movie, and I'm like, that makes sense.
Well, yeah, right. Well, I saw this one interview piece with him where he's talking about the first scene. I know we're not talking about Tremors yet. We'll get to that soon. I saw this interview with Todd Phillips, and he's talking about one of the first scenes in the movie where he's beaten in an alley by a bunch of like teens or whatever. Yeah. And he's commenting on the flower on the lapel and how he's like crouching on the ground in pain, and then the water comes out of the flower on the lapel. And he says, that's just because no matter what, he just wants to be having a good time and showing people a good time. And I'm like, that's not what that is at all. That's, the artificial fun that he's putting on, like completely depleting itself of everything because he's just been beaten to a pulp.
Yeah.
Like,
it's him being beaten so badly that even this artificial flower is oozing and
is giving up on him essentially.
Oh,
and it's
man.
like,
See,
and
this
I
is
saw
why
that
I don't
and I
watch
was
interviews.
and I was just like, this man doesn't know what he's talking about. And then also just real quick, and then we'll get to Tremors, just going down the list of, best feature. Little Women, it was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. I wish that it was nominated for directing for Greta Gerwig, because it's not going to win Best Picture. As enjoyable as it was, that's just not the kind of movie it is. And in terms of something that people are going to talk about for a long time, I don't think it's necessarily one that's going to be talked about as much as some other movies, like Parasite. Then we've got Marriage Story, which I think that it will stand the test of time, but not for the reasons of it being the best movie of the year, but for Adam Driver's performance or for the memes that it has spawned, things like that.
Yeah.
1917 is the only word I use to describe it, a triumph. But do I think I never use that word triumph.
John Richardson of Ruined Childhoods raves
triumph.
1917 is a triumph. I haven't seen it yet, but I really...
It is a filmmaking marvel. It is astonishing to watch it. And it is a really fascinating story. I think that had Birdman not been a kind of continuous shot type of thing, then this would be talked about a lot more. I mean, it won the Golden Globe, and I think that was fine, but I don't necessarily think it's the best of the best. I'm glad that people are noticing it and recognizing it for being such a phenomenal film to watch, but I don't think that it's going to stand the test of time so much.
So here's two things, because I haven't necessarily seen the movie, but a statement and a question. First of all, really, there's a lot of war movies. War movies it's a genre that there will always be more war movies. There are more movies about some wars than others. And I think especially kind of in the wake of Dunkirk and The Darkest Hour,
which are essentially the same. Well, should be watched simultaneously.
Well, yeah.
This is not 2 years ago. We don't have to talk about it.
Yeah, no. So, but you don't get a lot of representation of World War I, which is because America really was in World War I for a cup of coffee. America, America kind of gave out a lot of warnings first, and then they're just like, okay, here
we're on our way.
Here I come in, and it's, and then they come in and end the war. So 1970. So World War I isn't a movie, or is about a war that we don't have a lot of cinema about. And
right.
My question is, now you said that you don't think it'll stand the test of time. I feel
I mean that in the sense of when people are going through the lists of great movies, I don't think that it's going to come up on anybody's 2030 best of the decade list.
But in terms of
although I guess films, no, this is part of the last decade. Anyway, going on.
In terms of war films, I guess where does it? Because certain war films have stood the I think Full Metal Jacket, Apocalypse Now are those big war films that have stood the test of time and that are still talked about and seen. There are others that have not necessarily, I guess Platoon, yes, but Platoon, I would say less people would understand references to Platoon than Full Metal Jacket, and Platoon was a Best Picture winner.
Yeah, I think that it's really a matter of every year more movies are made, and then there are more movies throughout history.
Yes.
And it's just how
Josh,
it works.
Very astute observation.
You know what? But it's worth
movies
talking.
Movies are made, and
movies are made every
them.
day. Right. And it's not when one is made, one of them disappears from the past. We're just collecting more and more and more. And at the time that those movies that you mentioned were made, there wasn't as much being produced. there wasn't as much in the back catalog. You know, it's like almost like for every movie that's made one year, the next year 10 more are made, and it's just like it's easier, it's cheaper, and there are more studios, and there are more distribution companies, and there are more platforms because of streaming services and things like that. So it's kind of a different game than it was when something like Full Metal Jacket or Platoon came out.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing to really think about, but you have to consider that when you're talking about what then is the best movie of the next year, because it's not necessarily that we're just talking about like, oh, well, this one year, Frozen in Time, yes, that's what this is the best movie for, but there's going to be all the movies in the past that it has to live up to as well. What's up?
Sorry, you mentioned Frozen, so I got to call some BS here on Frozen 2 not getting a nomination for Best Animated Feature. Now, disclaimer, I have not seen the other movies that are nominated for Best Animated Feature, but I saw Frozen 2 and I thought it was so entertaining and good, and had such a better story, or for me, a more engaging story than the original. So I'm gonna call that one out too as kind of a snub. Is no Frozen 2 nomination.
I disagree, and I will. And looking at the other nominees, I can't say too much because I haven't seen Klaus, or I haven't seen. I've seen Missing Link. I didn't see Toy Story 3, or I Lost My Body, or How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. But I think that what it has to do with is the fact that Frozen, the original, had such a huge cultural impact that how can you live up to that?
How can you? But you don't get the Academy Award. I mean, you shouldn't get the Academy Award for biggest cultural. We're not going to like not give Frozen, like, does Frozen 2 not get a nomination because it was not like the global sensation that Frozen was?
Well, okay. Putting your mind in,
and it is a global sensation. It made a ton of money.
Frozen
and it's
2?
Still going. Frozen 2.
Right, but people are still going to be singing Let It Go, in 5 years. And I don't think that they're going to be singing any of the songs from this one.
I don't know, man. Like, in my house, Into the Unknown is...
Yeah, maybe in your house, but yeah, you have to also think about what Academy voters are considering. And I'm just going to tell you, you don't have to have seen Frozen to know about Let It Go. Or, it's just been out there. So what I'm saying is, I think that had Frozen 2 come out first, which I know is impossible because you need the one for the other, but if like those songs came first, then maybe they would have made more of an impact. Maybe they would be more memorable for people aside from you. But to me, it's also,
like,
I didn't think it was very good, but that's, a whole other thing.
Yeah.
I thought it was fine. Tremors.
I really like Frozen 2. Tremors. Tremors. Wow. There we go. There's a segue.
So I am going to make a note in the episode description for the time that we start talking about Tremors, in case anyone was going to skip through that. I probably should have mentioned that at the beginning of this Academy Award talk, but sorry, I didn't.
Well, we're a movie podcast. It's the Academy Award nominations.
So we are, let's see, what's today? Okay. We are right at the 30th anniversary of the release of Tremors.
We sure are.
We didn't plan this.
No.
No.
Did not realize this until looking at IMDb earlier this evening.
And honestly, pretty much the first anniversary of this podcast. So here we go.
Yeah, just about.
Just about. So, Tremors, January, was it 19th? 1990?
Yeah, January 19th, 1990.
It's a very simple, pretty low budget movie. Takes place in Perfection, Nevada. This extremely tiny, I don't even know if you could call it a town, but little...
Like a settlement?
Settlement. Middle of nowhere settlement with a population of, 14 or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And famously starring Kevin Bacon. And and less famously starring Fred Ward, featuring Michael Gross and Reba McEntire, which I didn't realize until I started watching it. And boy, oh boy, was she a delight. So it's the story of Kevin Bacon, who plays Val, and Fred Ward, who plays Earl. And they are two like handymen in this little settlement. And I don't understand how anybody there makes money, because they're just kind of passing things along between the like dozen or so of them that live there.
It's a barter. It's a commune.
Pretty much. There is Walter Chang's little grocery store, played by Victor Wong, which is a truly bizarre character and store.
The one character who we get an explanation as to why they're there is Michael Gross's character, Bert Gummer.
Right. Who is the only one that I think has been in all of the sequels. Except for probably the fourth, because that one is a prequel.
He's a prequel. Except I think he plays his ancestor. I think they'd go like back to the future. And
man, Michael Gross just loves that Tremors money.
Michael Gross is fantastic in Tremors. So
totally.
He and his wife, Reba McEntire, they're survivalists, ultimate libertarian.
Absolutely.
Survivalists. They have a whole bunker.
Off the grid bunker, a wall of guns. It's nuts.
They're like, we're surrounded by
preppers.
mountains. We're surrounded by mountains on one side, a canyon on the other side.
Yeah.
They're extremely wary of government surveillance. So
it's really fascinating.
The perfect person to have if you're going to be dealing with graboids.
Broke into the wrong goddamn rec room, didn't you, you bastard?
The other characters that we see are Rhonda, who is a college student who's there to do like a geological survey and is testing seismic activity. Conveniently so, because that is super helpful.
Great timing.
It senses seismic vibration. It can hear every move we make, especially on this rock. It's a perfect conductor.
That means we're stuck. That pisses me off.
They always have... I think the way that they set it up is that there's always a college intern who's out there doing that because it's Nevada. Sorry. I have a student at school who is from Nevada, and she, the very first week of school, was talking about how she's like, no, it's Nevada. I was like, okay, it is. And
we've seen Veep.
Veep, yes.
Yeah.
Nevada.
We know it's Nevada. And anytime someone says
Cole.
Nevada, I always just want to pop in and be like, Nevada. Gary Cole style.
So, you're in Nevada. You're going to be... that's where you're going to... If you want to study geology and seismic activity, that's a pretty good place to be.
Sure, yeah. So some other characters that we have are Melvin, who's like the teen brat who's maybe been abandoned by his parents and is just kind of living there. There's really no explanation as to who he is exactly.
apparently his parents live there, but they spend most of their time in Las Vegas and they leave him there.
That's fair.
So that
makes
was
sense.
just in the IMDb trivia. I think that comes from an earlier, like a draft of the script.
Fair enough. There's really
It
no
is not
explanation as
explained.
to why he's there.
There is no explanation whatsoever. So
There's a woman and her daughter, and the daughter is the girl from Jurassic Park,
Ariana Richards.
Mindy is the character's name.
Mindy.
We've got
She comes back.
Oh,
in,
does
like,
she
one of
really?
the sequels.
We've got is it Nestor, who's just like the town weirdo? There's just like this weird dude.
There's only one town. Wait,
look.
What does Nestor? Because I also watched Tremors 2. So yeah.
Then we
Nestor,
also
what
have
does he do?
a doctor and his wife who are there.
Oh yeah,
building a house.
Is Nestor the guy who climbs up
on the RV or whatever it is?
Is he up on the RV or up on the pole when
that's
where
Edgar?
They, like, find him. Oh, that's Edgar.
Yeah.
Edgar. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, Val and Earl are, they work together. They go do odd jobs. They do whatever has to get done. But they have this plan to just like get out of town. And it is as they are leaving, they've got their truck packed up, that weird things start happening. That's when they find Edgar up on the pole, dead.
Hey, look at that guy.
Well, it's one job I'd never do, working around electricity.
Hey, hold up. That's Edgar Deems.
Come on.
No, he only wears that one damn jacket. That's him, I'm telling you.
Man, oh man, it sure must have been drunk this time.
Edgar, get your butt down from there!
Well, shit. Can't leave him up there. Thank you, Edgar. You want me on this one, you damned old booze hound? One of these days, you're gonna have to get your ass on a wagon and stay there. Jesus, it's not like I don't have better things to do than to climb towers and drag your hairy ass down. Jesus.
They have no idea what happened. The doctor who is building the house tells them that he died from dehydration.
Was it a heart attack, Doctor?
No. Died of dehydration.
Thirst.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. That takes a couple of days, doesn't it?
Maybe even 3 or 4.
You mean he sat up there 3 or 4 days? He sat up there and just died of thirst?
Interesting. Wonder what happened there. Wonder if he was scared up that pole and too scared to come down. And yeah, it is a really bizarre monster movie that is actually it's a B movie that's really well done. And honestly, it's like they cover all their bases in a way that doesn't feel wacky. The science behind it is, like they don't necessarily feel the need to go into like the history behind the Graboids until, of course, the 4th movie when they have the prequel.
They show. Yeah, and
the Graboids, by the way, are these giant worms that have these little mini creatures that are like tongues that come out to like grab people and bring them in so that the main part of it can eat them.
Yeah, they're named. Walter Chang names them, and then there's a funny line in Tremors 2 where Fred Ward, who is he and Michael Gross are the only 2 returning cast members.
Right.
They talk about. So Fred Ward is talking to the scientist that he's got a flirtation going on with, and he's telling her that, or she asks who named them Graboids, and he goes, "Yeah, Walter Chang, he owned this little shop. He named them, then one ate them.
Yeah, pretty much.
No name. Huh. We discovered that we should name them.
Walter, forget the damn name.
Or suckoids. Oids. Oids. I like snakeoid. That's what I like. Graboid. That's it, Graboid.
Jesus, Walter.
We're gonna be sorry you don't give it a name.
And the delivery is like so many of the lines that Fred Ward has. The delivery
He's great.
He's great. He almost feels like I feel like his character could almost be related to Kurt Russell's Jack Burton in Big Trouble in Little China. Like that line about where they're isolated out on the rock, and he's like, we can't get off this thing. That pisses me off.
Yeah.
It reminded me so much of a Jack Burton delivery.
Yeah. And it should also be mentioned that there is the ever so slight romance story between Val and Rhonda. Kevin Bacon and Rhonda, who's played by Finn Carter, who's the geological student. And it's established at the beginning that he has this very specific standard for the type of woman that he is interested in.
You will have long blonde hair, big green eyes, world-class breasts, ass that won't quit, and legs that go all the way up.
And then over the course of the movie, as Rhonda is part of their gang and they're working really well together, they have this connection. Then at the end, he finally gets the nerve to go actually approach her in a way that has nothing to do with trying to get away from the Graboids.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't really have an opportunity up to
Not really.
point.
They were kind of busy. Although they were kind of on those rocks for a pretty long time.
They have to build the relationship.
Yeah.
So, plus, they didn't... you never know when a Graboid's going to jump out. What's going to happen.
That's true. That's true. I don't know. It's a really fun movie. I did not watch any of the sequels or the brief television series.
There were supposed to be two.
Right. There was one that was, I think, 13 episodes and then got canceled. Then there was they did a pilot with a series starring Kevin Bacon
And Fred Ward
that never, I don't know, it kept on bouncing around and got to sci-fi and then eventually just got canned.
Yep.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah. So I did watch Tremors 2, Aftershock. Right. I thought it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it as I enjoyed the first one. It takes place in Mexico, where a oil refinery is being
so Earl and Michael Gross's character Bert.
Yeah.
So
Bert.
Earl and Bert are both in Mexico, or are they brought in as specialists? How does that work out?
Earl is brought in as a specialist. So there's this really great, because Tremors 2 came out in 1996. So there's a decent span of time between the two, and it's established pretty early on that they were big news, they were big celebrities for a short amount of time.
Is there a newspaper montage?
There's not. Only during the ending credits. So no, there was, but you see a newspaper clipping. You see them on the cover of different magazines. It's almost similar to Ghostbusters. And they show there's a Graboid video game, and apparently you get the idea that the guys didn't ever get a lawyer or anything, and didn't get any. So everyone thinks they got rich off everything, and they didn't. Earl's living in a trailer. And so he's getting offered all this money to come down to Mexico because the Graboids are attacking at the in the oil fields. So they're
Is there
losing tons of money.
Is there a political statement to be made? Is it an anti-fracking story before that was big news?
Kind of. Kind of. Well, in a way that when you're drilling into the Earth's surface, you are disrupting an ecosystem.
Yeah.
Even though it's subterranean, it's an ecosystem, and the premise of the Graboids really is similar to the whole concept behind the new Kong Godzilla monsterverse, which leads into one of my speculatory ideas.
Ooh, okay.
I
see where this is going.
I'm like, well, what can you do that hasn't been done? Because they've done all these sequels. They did a prequel.
I've got an idea.
Oh, I'm sure you do. But when you and that's when you think to yourself, when you sit there and you think to yourself, what could you do that hasn't been done? That's when you start to think of the things that you could do that haven't been done. And so one of those things was, hey, why not just let's fold them into that whole franchise and imagine you're going to see Kong versus Godzilla or whatever, if they continue to do those movies and add more, and just at the end of, like, you've got like Mothra coming in, and at the end of this climactic battle, out of the side of this mountain comes a Graboid and it just snatches Mothra. And Kong and Godzilla are just like, what the hell was that? And like Michael Gross standing on the top of a cliff with a howitzer.
Yeah.
Just like blasting away. So that was one of my ideas. My other, if I may.
You may.
If I may launch into my the other ideas. The other one was, I was like, man, I would love to see an Alien versus Predator versus Graboid, but it was really only because Alien versus Predator was on my brain, brief tangent, that it came up in class the other day.
Huh.
I'm teaching Raisin in the Sun to my language arts classes, and I was talking about there was a 1989 production with Danny Glover. And one of my kids, like, the hand shoots up. And Danny Glover, isn't that the only actor to get killed by both a predator and an alien in the movies? And I was like, I don't think Danny Glover ever got killed by an alien. No.
Right.
And I don't recall if he got killed by the predator. I'm pretty sure he survived in Predator 2.
Yeah, I wonder who he might have been thinking of.
I don't know. Yeah. Different Danny Glover. I guess I was thinking about that. I was thinking, and then my other
just real quick, before we move on to something else, it's interesting because the Tremors sense people's presence by vibrations in the earth, whether it's, your voice causing it or walking or something like that. And Predator, it's all through heat. It's all through temperature. So what a great combo.
Oh, wow. Like the Predator riding the thing, like Gina Davis riding the sandworm at the end of Beetlejuice.
Exactly.
And then I was like, what if you just went in a totally different direction? Like, I want to see Guillermo del Toro's Tremors.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we do have so many amazing directors right now who really know how to handle subtle but effective, crazy visual effects.
Yeah. So that was just one of the people that I thought of.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about there?
All right, Dan. Tremors is a property of Universal. So why isn't there a Universal Studios theme park attraction for Tremors? They have one for Waterworld.
Hold on a second.
What?
So, a little behind the scenes here. So John has yet to hear the intro that you've all heard at the beginning of the episode, in which New York Times critic Vincent Canby is quoted as saying that Tremors is the type of movie that is made by Universal Studios just so that they could have a movie for people to see getting made for tourists to see.
Oh,
getting
that's
made.
really funny.
So
well, no, I don't.
His suggestion is that the actual making of Tremors is
that's
the attraction.
that's a really funny comment to make. No, because it's like I don't know if they still have it, but there's like the Water World, stage show, and I know that. And talking about movies that have had lasting effects, Waterworld is interesting because people talk about it, but I don't think they're talking about it. They're not talking about it because it's a good movie. They're talking about it because we've been reminding them about it because of things like the attraction at Universal Studios, or it's just if people want to talk about someone drinking their own pee. What's up?
Either or, yes. And the other tie-in to your idea here is in Tremors 2, the new Fred Ward's new sidekick, who's like this like super fan, of Val and Earl. His idea is to open a theme park.
Oh, no way!
And it's funny.
Well, then it's even more perfect.
Well, after this one sequence where, like, they get dragged by a graboid, like, the graboid has a chain that's attached to their pickup and it pulls them. And after the whole sequence is done, he goes, "That's the first ride in the amusement park."
Oh, my God.
So John, you're not alone in thinking about this.
Yeah, I mean, so the Waterworld one, it's a stage show and it has stuntmen or stunt performers doing a whole, like, scene. And it's like, yeah, that would totally be perfect for Tremors. You have like an animatronic graboid come out and you have your stunt performers doing their thing. And I don't know.
Don't you think like a ride, like almost like a 3D attraction, like I know I'm referencing, I know there's a new Star Tours that's been updated, but I'm thinking of that type of thing where like either you are riding something like you're chasing a graboid and you're like in the pickup and you're rattling around and everything, or you like are the graboid.
Yeah, right.
And you're going underground, you're going.
Well, yeah, I mean, Tremors is such an interesting one to be focusing on because there are plenty of sequels. There's a prequel. There are, TV series, multiple based on it. One of which is a continuation with Val's character. But I don't know. Have there been any straight reboots of it or remakes of it? I don't think so. Yeah, I mean that could happen, and like you were saying, with somebody like Guillermo del Toro or something that's a little bit more dark. But also, I feel like Nevada in the middle of the day is, in its own way, so perfect for a movie like this that you wouldn't want it to be too ominous and creepy in the nighttime. I mean, there are nighttime scenes like when they get the doctor and the wife, but it's mostly daytime.
Another idea, and I don't, maybe this was something they've touched upon in some of the sequels, or the prequel. What if you had a Tremors set around the time of the nuclear testing in New Mexico? What if you said, because that was another thing I was thinking, I was like, what if you just took the kind of the concept of Tremors and you rebooted it, but you did some almost like they did with like they've done with Predator, and just give it a new setting. And I mean, it's the formula of a monster movie is usually pretty simple. Monster shows up, people figure out how to stop it.
Right. Well, and what's interesting about the Graboids is that, you'll never know what their motive really is, or, what drives them aside from just like hunger. I don't know.
Well, and then they also, there's evolutions of them, because in part 2 you have the Shriekers. In part 3 you have the Assblasters.
The Assblasters? I know there's one where they fly.
I think that might be the Assblasters. I could be mistaken. I have not necessarily followed up.
Yeah, it would have been impossible for us to watch all of these movies and the TV show.
Yes.
Yeah.
There has not yet been a musical. Broadway
which I think is
or
fine.
other. I think, although I would suggest with the success of King Kong on Broadway,
Well,
what comes next?
yeah,
Next
I don't
logical
know.
step?
I think that something like King Kong, because King Kong isn't a subterranean creature, there's not as much that you can do on
John,
stage.
On stage with the magic of theater, you can do anything. Okay?
Fine.
Get
All
Julie
right.
Taymor. Call Julie
Well,
Taymor.
of course
Look
we're
at
getting
what she did with
Taymor.
The Lion
Jeez.
King.
Yeah.
Yes. Don't look at what she did with Spider-Man. Look at what she did with The Lion King. And yeah. Call Julie Taymor, get her and her staff working on a Graboid puppet, and see what Kevin Bacon is doing.
Yeah. He'd be down for it. I mean, he clearly was interested in doing the TV series, and I read in one of the things, I don't know if it was IMDb or Wikipedia or something, but like when he first signed on to do this, he was like kicking himself saying like, why did I agree to do this stupid monster movie? And then went on saying that it was the best time he ever had making a movie.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Why would you not do Tremors on Broadway?
I don't know, Dan.
I mean, like the Broadway of the 21st century is the multiplex of the 1990s. So like,
okay.
Well,
speaking
Legally
of
Blonde,
speaking
there's
of the multiplex of the 1990s, do you remember when you first saw Tremors?
Nice segue.
Thank
No,
you.
I don't. It was possibly a blockbuster night. It could have been something I taped off HBO and just watched like a random afternoon. I don't know. I have no right. Do you remember when you saw it for the first time?
Yeah, it was the other day when I watched it for this podcast.
That was the first time. That was the first time you had seen it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. I don't remember, and I didn't remember that much about it per se. I didn't like it enough to really ever see it again up until recently, but I'm glad I did.
Well, watching it the other day, and I think that I never saw it before because I always just assumed that it was going to be a cheesy, schlocky monster movie, which it is, but I didn't expect that it was going to be so engaging and funny and weird in a way that it knows it's weird.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yes.
Not that they sacrificed, the scares in favor of the weird, because there certainly are some scares to it. And like when I think it might have been, when Kevin Bacon is like going to go get the like the tractor or whatever it is that he's getting towards the end, and the Graboid like finds where he is and he's standing very still, and the Graboid's out of the ground, and you see like the Graboid head thing almost getting his feet.
Yeah.
That's like really intense.
There's some intense moment. Well, we've got a solid hand behind the camera here. We've got Ron Underwood, who would go on his next feature film would be City Slickers.
Is that
after
right?
this.
How
So,
about that?
Yeah. Man who knows that we've got some horseback riding in this.
We do.
Little horseback riding. So something that Mr. Underwood would be revisiting with City Slickers.
A lot of dust.
A lot of dust. No horses. No calves.
Some cowboy hats.
Norman.
Yeah, it's a really fun movie, and I'm glad that I was forced to watch it for this podcast.
Now, what do you think the odds are that you'll check out any of the other
0%.
movies?
I would
0.
Yeah. If Adam Sandler's character in Uncut Gems had to place a bet on me seeing any of these movies,
oh wow,
I'd have to say,
so, was that a snub? I haven't seen Uncut Gems. Was that a snub?
For him or for the movie?
In general.
I think that he deserved maybe to be nominated, but not to win. And the movie was rightfully not nominated.
Okay. All right. I'll get back to you on that once
That said, I think it's one that people are going to be bringing up for a long time.
Okay.
So
good to know.
It falls into a gray area for me.
Okay. All right. Good to know. I plan on checking it out. Also, and another before we sign off, I'm looking forward to filling you in. We are going to see Bad Boys for Life. So in the sequel, in the realm of sequels, we've got Bad Boys for Life, which so far I think is at like a 70% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's like fresh.
Okay.
So
all right.
So who knows? We'll find out.
Yeah.
John, anything?
Well, I'm going to be going to see, I live in Portland, Oregon. I'm going to be seeing the Oregon Symphony perform along with the film Ghostbusters. And that's an area that we haven't touched upon, is maybe some of these movies are also worthy of a symphony accompaniment treatment.
Ooh.
Maybe that'll come up in the future. We'll see.
Interesting. That's an interesting way we could go. Well, we'll see if it comes up for our next episode, because I don't.
Yeah.
Please
go on. No,
you
go
wanted
on.
to say John has no idea.
I was gonna go segue into what we were talking about doing, but I don't know if it's gonna be what you are intending to say.
I don't think it is.
Okay, go on.
So next episode, we will be talking about 1991's The Rocketeer.
We sure will.
Yeah. So excited to check
that
one out.
Glad I didn't go with my segue. Wouldn't have made sense.
No. So, yeah, I'll give you the back. John and I were talking earlier, and we were between this and something else, and I told him, I was like, yeah,
something else that had, and I believe still has, a theme park attraction.
Oh, okay. I was not aware of that. So good to know. But I look forward to see
The Rocketeer. All right.
I look forward to seeing The Rocketeer again.
I haven't seen it in forever.
Time. And I'm gonna a little teaser. I remember where I saw it.
You know, I bet if I had to come up with it, like forced at gunpoint, like, you know, I think that maybe I'd be able to conjure up a memory. I know I saw it in the theater. That's all I know. Anyway,
okay,
we'll talk about that next time.
We might have seen it together. I don't know. So, good journey, John.
Good journey.